Hello, welcome back to All for United. We've got two debutants with me today because although if you watch the women's channel, you will have seen Barry week in, week out, probably 3 or 4 times a week, but he's never been on this side of the channel. So first time for Barry, and also for our special guest for this evening, who again, if you've watched the women's channel, you'd have seen him on there about 3 weeks ago. But Barry, Graham, thanks for coming on. Hope you're both doing well. Well, I know, Barry, me and you were literally on a show about half an hour ago, but hope you've recovered from that in the last however long. And Graham, for people who don't know who you are, obviously you're a big Sunderland fan as well. We all know that. But what are you kind of known for? I guess I know you're in journalism and things like that. But if for people who don't know who you are, what is it you do in and around football?
I probably do too much. But yeah, first and foremost, obviously, journalist is my occupation. Whether it's a good one or a bad one, I'll let the other people decide on that and ignore the comments of the people who say that I'm bad. I work for the Scotsman primarily, so I'm based up here in Glasgow, but Sunderland season ticket holder, like 3 hours away, so it's not the worst journey on the planet. But I primarily write an awful lot about films and write an awful lot about women's football, which is obviously the mention before of. Been on the show previously, and I've covered Manchester United women quite extensively this season alongside Manchester City women as well, as part of my job role, and been in a few games as well. But I think my full-time job, that has been my full-time job for most of my life, has been supporting Sunderland first and foremost, and over the last 3 to 5 years talking about Sunderland on my own podcast, and currently worshipping Amad Diallo.
I was going to say, when we put the tweet out earlier, there was a load of Sunderland, and it only tweaked for me about 2 hours ago what they were on about when they were saying, "Oh, just go on there, tell them that Amad's not worth it, and offer him cheap and that kind of thing." I think I worked out why you're saying that. So I'll probably get to that.
I feel like we've undersold Graham here because he's a star of the big screen too, isn't he?
Oh yes, we did mention this on the last show.
On the women's channel, we've got to big him up properly. Tell us a bit more about that. What have you been noticed for the most?
Having an argument with Charlie Methven on Netflix. It's funny really because looking back, that was it feels like a lifetime ago. But people might recognize me from season 2. I think everyone's seen the Charlie Methven salmon pants trying to get Ibiza rave going on in the Stadium of Light. Didn't work. The PA systems broke, which Oscar told everyone, and probably still kind of is. But yeah, there was an episode in that when I used to be on a previous podcast, but actually before I was a journalist, when I was just a glorified blogger, if you prefer. And I got the opportunity to speak to Mr. Methven, and we don't get on. And I think the show has about a 4-minute segment when it shows you we don't get on, but it quite a funny thing between friends because I am absolutely raging in the episode and my face is like thunder. So there's lots of screenshots that occasionally get passed back and forth to me still to this day, about 3 or 4 years on from that horrendous meeting between us both. But I told him Will Grigg was the wrong signing, and lo and behold, guess who was right? Yeah, me again.
100%. So you might recognise Graham from that. That's for sure. If you don't, go and rewatch it. It's a good little series. To be fair, I thought it was quite funny. Well, I probably shouldn't say it to you, but it was funny seeing the demise. I found it quite funny anyway. After the whole Sunderland's celebrating against us when City robbed the title off us. So it's quite funny to see the downfall there. But
can't say that I was there, Connor. Can't say that I know how to do the Poznan.
Oh, see, there we go. Let's move on to the topic then. Obviously, Amad Diallo. I think this is a guy, out of all of our youngsters that we've got, maybe apart from Hannibal, actually, that is widely spoken about now because it seems like week in, week out, he is tearing up for you guys at Sunderland. So just as a brief, or however long you want to explain it, what's his time been like at Sunderland so far?
Rubbish. You should probably just get rid of him, sell him to the Championship for about £1 million. I would actually send him on a free transfer. It's not even worth the wages we've probably shelled out on him on the loan fee or whatever it may be. No, he's been phenomenal. He's been great. Probably slightly different for me in many ways with Diallo coming because me living in Glasgow, I'll frequent Ibrox quite a bit, and obviously I've seen him at Rangers, and I think he was a little bit more liked at Rangers than some people let on. It just didn't really work for him in terms of game time, but there's a few reasons for that. He scored on his debut against Ross County, but they also conceded in the 97th minute. And then he played against Celtic in a game that was just not great if you're a Rangers fan. And then obviously the Europa League run happened, and then it's hard to change a team when you're kind of going towards winning a European Cup, and he didn't get in it. But there was links to him going back to Rangers in the summer, which I think Van Bronckhorst, as it was at the time, was quite interested in, and not Rangers fans went, why not? Like, bring him in and see, he had flashes. But lo and behold, we were linked to him. And I remember thinking at the time, there's no chance we're going to get Diallo. Because I know we're Sunderland. I know we're a big championship club. I get that. We're a Premier League club, in my opinion, in everything but name. But we just came up from League One, and we are realistic at the same time. And we thought, Diallo at Man United really going to look and think, well, he's spent 6 months at Rangers, at Sunderland, a team that could be potentially fighting against relegation. But he's been phenomenal pretty much from day dot, to be honest with you. I wasn't sure what we were going to get, because the Championship's a funny little league where you get some really good technical players that you can quite evidently see are going to go on towards the Premier League. There's a few of them in our team at the moment, some of them that have been in the Premier League, like Jack Clark and stuff. And but there's also some bruisers that will just kick you up a height and play really direct football. But I think it's probably a perfect marriage, because we play really nice football. Some of the best football I've ever seen Sunderland play. I include the Premier League days with that. Mowbray has us playing some really lovely one-touch football. There's a goal we scored against Reading earlier in the season, which Diallo's not included in, by the way, so I don't know why I'm telling you this. But it's like one-touch football, and how it wasn't nominated for a Puskas Award, I don't know. People listening go, come on, watch it. Honestly, it's outstanding. Like, at Jack Clark's third against Reading, it's all one-touch passing. I think we go from back to front in 10 passes and score a great goal. But Diallo, to be fair, is part of that fantastic one-touch football he's built up. A really nice partnership with Patrick Roberts. He's currently playing like the 10 at the moment, but he's played predominantly on the right. He's played for us sometimes up front. We had a big striker problem, so he's played in various different positions. But the best thing about Diallo is he's played really well in almost all of them. But I personally like him in the 10. But yeah, the short answer, to be honest, Connor, is he's been phenomenal.
Like prime bars, as someone's saying there.
It really was. Honestly, if Man United fans, if you haven't watched it, that's pure football for you. All right, that's how you play football. It was a beautiful goal, in all seriousness. It was a really good goal, and a lot of our goals this season, if you watch them, Diallo scored some crackers from outside the box, some good long ranges, but he's also been part of some really nice one-touch football. He's key to the way that we play, to be honest with you. He's up there with our most important player, but the one thing with Diallo is that, unfortunately, I think you can kind of see he's that good that we might not hold on to him. So we've kind of already resigned ourselves a little bit. I'm sure we'll get on to that, but we've resigned ourselves a little bit. But to answer your question, Connor, he's been brilliant. I love him. There's a really funny video of one of my friends celebrating his goal with his celebration and getting it all wrong. I don't know what he does, Diallo. I know it's for his friend, but he celebrated like this, my friend, which is not the celebration. And funnily enough, Diallo reposted it on his Instagram, which was a great laugh. But he's been great. I think he's got about 5-7 goals, and he's been part of a really successful season so far that could get even better if we're lucky.
Yeah, I think, Barry, from a United point of view, do you think that's the Championship is the way to go? Because we've done loan shows in the past when we've talked about, obviously, Laird, Chong and Mengi and all these other players that have gone to the Championship and maybe even League One with some of the other youngsters. Do you think that's the route for some of these players to get into the United squad, is to... Because the Championship's good. It's a really good league. I'm going to ask you this, Graham, in a second in terms of what he's learned there. But do you think that's the best way of pushing him? Because, like I say, he didn't really get on well with Rangers and didn't get too many minutes there. But the Championship, do you think that's where we should be sending our player?
It can be tricky, can't it? You send them to a Premier League team, you're potentially putting them into a team that might be lower down, not creating the chances they need to create. And I think that's a bit of a drama sometimes, is that actually you're sending them to a place where they're not going to have the opportunity to have as many chances. I think what we're seeing here is I was looking at some of his stats at Sunderland, and already he's the third top scorer in the club. He scored 11 out of his 48 starts that he's had. So for someone who generally tends to play out wide, he's getting quite good at it. Scored at all of the clubs he's been at. And let's not forget that he scored against AC Milan for us in the Europa League with that 1-1 draw. So, he's played 3 games now for the Ivory Coast, and he scored a goal there as well. So I think talent will come through wherever you put it. And I think that the biggest example I would put for that was obviously David Beckham going to Preston North End. You wouldn't say Preston North End, wow, what a team. But you see the talent because they're playing week in, week out in competitive football. You know, whatever you want to say about the under-23s and all of that sort of jazz, you don't get the same level of commitment as you would do in a proper league status. So I think whichever league they go to, obviously wouldn't put down League One, League Two really, but absolutely, I think the Championship can be a really good breeding ground. And I think it's one of those that's mutually beneficial, because if he's doing really well for Sunderland, it helps them to grow. And let's be honest, Graham's saying, oh, it's devastating, we might not be able to keep Ahmed Diallo. But if you get promoted, you can have enough money to go and buy yourself somebody else. If you don't get promoted, well, then, you know, it's less of a drama. So it's quid pro quo. We get a player. And I'm sure we'll come back to it later, but, you know, where's he going to fit in when he comes back? And that's the big thing. So I think there's loads of things you would look at with the loans. But for me personally, yes, I've got no drama sending people to a Championship side. The interesting thing that Graham's mentioned there is that he felt Sunderland were potentially going to be flirting with relegation this year. And actually, you know, they're like 3 points off the playoffs, I think. So, you know, it's again, mutually beneficial. But it means he's getting into a position where he's helping to supply goals, helping to score goals. And that's what you need for your players that are going to be attacking players. They need to be in positions where they can do that, and not where they're just the sole people being relied on almost to pull them through. He's in a team that's working hard. So I think it's brilliant, and it can only be beneficial for all the parties.
No, I tend to agree with that. And the Championship, like I said, 'cause we've done shows on this in the past where we've spoken about the Championship in particular. And it does seem to be one of the ideal leagues. I can see your question, Andrew. I'm going to come back to that in a second. But I just want to get your thoughts, Graham, on kind of Premier League loans to the Championship. Like, we've had a couple of, we've had a Birmingham fan on, we've had a Swansea, we've done shows with Bournemouth and all these different fans. And they all say to the same thing, that the Championship is the best place because it's physical, it's very fast paced. The league is always so condensed. You might have one team that runs away with it a little bit, like we've seen with Fulham and Norwich in the past. But you look at the league, there's not that many points between teams, and anyone can beat anyone on any given basis. I know the Premier's a little bit like that, but the Championship's a mental league. Like, you can see like 20th beating second one week, and then the other way they'll get smacked 6-0 by 15th. It's just such a weird league. But how do you feel, Graham? Do you think it is the ideal place to be sending top Premier League youngsters?
I think in Diallo's case, I do. I think that the Championship was really good, but I think he needs 5 years at Sunderland. Yeah, I agree. 10, please.
Definitely a Sunderland fan.
100%. I agree with you, John, 100%. I think for me with Diallo, that aside, his move to Sunderland's really clever and really beneficial, because with Diallo at Sunderland, we have the joint youngest team in the Championship. So our model, I had to say the model at some point, Sunderland fans will be laughing at that if you're watching. But it's basically like bringing players that are under 24 that have got a resale value, or bringing good young players from good Premiership sides or Premier League sides, to show my age there, and then get them in sort of the team and give them a bit of experience and stuff like that. I think when it comes to Diallo, he's coming to a team where a lot of the lads around him are the same age as him. Like, for example, we'll tend to play like Ross Shear up top, who's 26, who is the best player in the world. Diallo may be the second. Diallo will be in the 10, or you'll have Jack Clark on the left, who obviously was at Spurs and came through at Leeds, and he's 20, 21. On the right-hand side, you'll have Patrick Roberts, who's still only 24, 25, and he's one of the older players in the squad. But I think we obviously had the issue with Alex Neil at the start of the season, went to Stoke. I don't know why. I still will never know why he went to Stoke, why anyone would go to Stoke. No offence to Stoke, but Stoke. It still baffles me. But he left, obviously, and Tony Mowbray came in. And to be honest, it's kind of worked. I was devastated when Alex Neil left, in all seriousness, because he was one of my favourite managers that we've had. But unfortunately, he did go to Stoke for whatever reason it may be. On a serious note, brought in Tony Mowbray, who's like a granddad figure, like genuine granddad. He talks like he's 75. I think he's only 57, but he talks like he's 75. But he's really good with the young kids. In terms of like looking after them and making sure they're getting enough game time and trusting them. And he's obviously got a lot of trust in Diallo. And I think he said at one point he felt like Diallo could even play like deep in the middle. And I think he did at one point play a couple of games and he looked fine. He played predominantly in the 10. He's played on the right-hand side sometimes. He played up front once. I wouldn't say he's a striker, to be fair. I think I said before he's performed well everywhere he's gone. Up front was probably his least favoured position. You can quite evidently see he's the person that set these things up. It took him like a couple of games to get going, to be fair, which you could say maybe it took him a couple of games to get used to the Championship. But once he scored against Burnley, and Burnley, I think they're about 15 points clear or something at the top of the league, like they're walking it. We were 2-0 up against them at half-time, got beat 4-2, which was unfortunate. But Diallo was like the spearhead of that day, him and a young boy called Dan Neal, who's equally as impressive. But to kind of go back to the question, it's hard for me to answer in the case of Diallo, because I think there's loads of players that probably do benefit from being in the Championship because of the league that it is. But I think Diallo's probably benefiting equally from the club that he's at, and the way that we work with players and the models that we have towards working with players. But if you look throughout the years, we've had tons of former Sunderland players, former Man United players at Sunderland that have signed permanently, like Big Bad Wesley Brown, Shazy has obviously been there, Fraser Campbell, Kieran Richardson. But the ones that we brought in on loan is probably, I know the league's changed an awful lot, but there was a young boy that I watched at Sunderland in the Championship, and then he was signed him in January. We basically lost one game until the end of the season. He got promoted under Roy Keane. He was centre-half for us for a long time. In that period, we couldn't get him back on loan because Sir Alex wanted him. And in the first 6 months, we sort of flirted with relegation a little bit too much. We got him back in the January, and he just sorted the defence out. And we all kind of said, I wish we could sign him permanently. I wish we just chuck money at Manchester United because I love him. That man went on to become a player that would play a lot of games for Man United, is still playing in the Premier League, and in my opinion, is one of the most underrated centre-backs in the Premier League of the last 10 years, and that's Johnny Evans. Johnny Evans would get in my all-time Sunderland 11, if I'm completely honest with you. He was that good for us. And Diallo, similar to like the likes of Danny Welbeck, Johnny Evans, when you get a player on loan, sometimes you go, I wish we could keep him, but I kind of understand that we probably can't. And I think he'll go on to be X, Y, Z and play well here, right, left and centre. And I think Diallo, he's just quality. Like, I want to give you like really in-depth discussion. He's just quality. Like he's just a natural talent. Do you know what I like about Diallo? My favorite thing about Diallo, and it might seem, well, no, it's when he scores goals. That's my favorite thing about Diallo. But something that I didn't expect to like, because I watched him at Rangers and he's obviously a flair player. I watched him on United sporadically. He's obviously a flair player. He's all about the running, the pace, the shots, the kind of I can't think of the word. The low center of gravity, that's the word I was looking for. It's all about like that with Diallo. But you know what? He absolutely works his knackers off. Like he chases everything backwards. He supports his fullback if he's playing on the right. He's not the best tackler in the world. He's not like defensively outstanding, but he'll make sure his body's there to try his best. And some Championship defenders just cannot deal with him. We had the worst referee that's ever existed in the history of man on Saturday. And I genuinely mean that. Deary me. We had a player sent off, which a lot of people think it was a red card. I personally don't, but I think I'm in about a 10% minority with that. But just before that, Diallo should have had a penalty. He wasn't given. A lot of people said, well, you know, that should have been a penalty. But if, you know, in the context of this conversation, Diallo gets the ball, runs into the box. You don't know which side he's going. The lad ends up pulling his shirt and then like kind of stand on the back of his ankle because he's twisted him in knots. And you see that every time with Diallo, but on the surface, he's a luxury player. One thing that I don't know if it's been instilled in him being in a Championship team and with Tony Mowbray, but his defensive work's good as well. His work rate's solid. You don't see him go missing, in my opinion anyway. He doesn't go missing in games where you think, oh, Diallo's done nothing. On the flip side, he was absolutely awful on Saturday, to be fair, but it's about the only bad game he's had. And he was playing with 10 men for most of the game. And it was just one of those games where like nothing came off for him, but it's like one bad game, about 20 that he's played for us, I think. But going forward, he's excellent. He's obviously far too good for this league in terms of ability and natural talent, but his work rate's massive, and I don't think that's come from the Championship. And being in a team that is not going to win every single game, but his work rate's been excellent since he came in here as well, which I think is a massive benefit because he needs to do that as well when he's at Manchester United. If he goes back, please don't go back.
Something that I find is always an interesting talking point when we talk about the youngsters coming through, and something that I noticed a lot with like Ronaldo, for example, when he was younger. How do you feel he's getting on with the the rigours and the strength part of the game? You know, do you find that he holds the ball well? You just mentioned there about how he's running through people. He might be getting pulled back, having people stepping on them. That's one part of it. You're always going to get kicked. But how do you think he's getting on with, you know, is he staying upright a lot? Does he go over quite a bit? What would you say with regards to that?
He can win a free kick. If you know what I mean. He can win a free kick, but he's stronger than you'd anticipate. He's very slight, don't get me wrong. He's a very small boy. He's not exactly the most muscly strong man, but I feel like when he does win your free kick, it tends to be because he has tied a defender and nothing gets kicked. It's almost like his brain's too fast. But you know what I mean? There's a goal we scored against Birmingham. He got the second one, and don't get me wrong, you've probably seen the second one. He cuts in on his left and just kills in a beauty from about 25 yards out. An outstanding goal. But regarding strength, the first goal that we scored, Ellis Sims scored it, who should still be here, but Everton obviously want to bring him on for 7 minutes at the end of a game, but that's not how you treat youngsters. If anyone's listening, Frank Lampard. He gets the ball in like sort of just outside the D, and it looks like he's losing control of the ball, but he's actually not. He's just spinning in like a circle, and he holds off about 4 different players, and then threads through a ball that no one saw. Like, I did not see it. No one else seen it. I don't know how he's done it, but it's all about his strength, his ability to still see the pass, keep his head up. So yeah, look, he's not barging people out the way. He's not like choke slamming people and making sure he gets past them that way. But he's either too fast and too clever and too tricky, or when he has to hold the ball up and he has to kind of like bring other people into the game or make the pass at the right time, and be a bit stronger and hold up the play and bring that he's right back into the play, or you know, one of the more deeper line midfield players. I think his strength's fine. He's not the most strongest person in the world, but I never watch it and go, oh, Diallo's a bit too slight for this. I might have thought that when I watched him at Rangers, if I'm honest. But the Scottish Premiership is like very different. They will.
That's why I asked, because I'd seen at Rangers he didn't seem to have the strength, so I thought I'd throw that across.
He's better than, because I watched him extensively at Rangers because of where I live. And at Rangers, I was like, he's got something. Yeah, he's definitely got something. I quite like him. And then other players get in the team because of the run that they went on, and you can't change the team when you're getting into the Europa League final, basically. But I think he came on against Ross County, I think he got like 30 minutes against Ross County, which was like the last home game of the season, and scored. Looked really well, linked up really nicely, and kind of did what he's doing at Sunderland now. But I would say I thought he'd be a really good signing for Sunderland. He's been better than what I thought based on what I'd seen of him at Rangers. And that includes like his work rate, his strength, his actual technical ability, and his speed. He seems faster than he was at Rangers as well. He can really travel at some speed. It's hard for me to downplay any part of it, because there's no real part of Ahmad that I'm not happy with, if I'm completely honest with you. I want to say like, yeah, he's crap, give us him for $1 million, but unfortunately I have to sometimes tell the truth.
I think that you raised a lot of good points there. I think Andrew's talking there to add to your point. You know, Ahmad's good change of direction, quick foot and dribbling. I think that's what we've all seen, certainly from him, from brief time, obviously, and obviously over in Italy as well. The other question I just briefly had, you briefly hit on it there in terms of, did you have a certain level of expectation for Ahmad when he came across? Because I know you said you saw him a lot, obviously, at Rangers, but there's a certain expectation when particularly United youngsters go on loan. You know, I speak to fans of the clubs a lot. Oh, they're from United, they must be good. Like, they've got to be good. But then you forget the age of some of these players when they're coming over. They're coming into a team that, you know, might have people sometimes double their age, you know, in the squad that are going into tackles in training, completely, you know, smacking them out of training. So like, who's this new kid on the block? Think, you know, 18, 19 years old, coming doing tricks around me. I'm not having that. And just, you know, completely bullying them in training and things like that. Was there that expectation? Did you think he was going to do as well as he has done, or how did you kind of view that?
Yeah, he's been better than what I think any of us could have hoped for, because he's now one of our most important players, as opposed to just a player that can add to the squad. It's funny, like we've had players on loan from Man United. Danny Simpson was one. Unfortunately, ended up going to that team up the road on a longer period of time, but he came on loan to us at the same time Johnny Evans did. And yeah, you know what, he's really good. And I think we didn't know what to expect of Danny Simpson. I think a few of us thought he'd go on and do really well for Man United. And some people might say, you know, Danny Simpson didn't do much in his career. He won the Premier League with Leicester, so he obviously had something about him. And Johnny Evans came in, we didn't really know what he was, and ended up being like absolutely class. and love Johnny Evans. Danny Welbeck was probably the player that came in for us with a bit of expectation because he scored for Man United. He was highly rated. But Danny Welbeck was better than what we thought we were going to get. We were like, oh, hang on a minute. This kid's actually not too bad. And by the end of his loan, we were like, you know what? If he wasn't injured all the time, I wonder how much money we'd spend on him, or how much Man United would sell him for, and yada yada. And I think Welbeck's career has unfortunately not hit the heights it should have done, but he's still done bloody well. Still played in tournaments and stuff. And I think maybe Diallo would potentially be where we kind of expect him to be. We thought, well, we've got a player here. We know we've got a player here, but is he going to like reach the heights of what we expect? And he's been above and beyond, to be honest. Like he just gets me off my feet. I think that the beauty of Diallo is, again, just to go back to what I said before, he's in a team that plays to his strengths, and his strengths play to the team's strengths. His partnership over the past month with Patrick Roberts. I mean, people look at Patrick Roberts as a player that's had like 6 loan moves and didn't really work out in Man City and stuff like that. And look, so did we when we got him. We signed him in League One for a reason. He was in League One after being a £40 million player at 17 for a reason. And we thought, oh, let's hope Patrick Roberts turns out to be decent. And he's been great. He's found a home here. And like, we scored a goal against that's the benefit. That's the beauty of this conversation. I can point you to different goals we've scored and say, oh, watch this goal because Diallo XYZ. We scored a goal against Wigan. It's a deflected shot at the end of it, which kind of kills it a little bit. But it's an interplay between Patrick Roberts and Diallo where, can I swear on this? Are we past the period?
You go for it.
I can. He just takes the piss out of Wigan. Like the duo of them just take the piss out of Wigan. Like James McLean's at right back and he just kind of keep up. There's a point where he's like got his hands on his shoulders because he just kind of keep up with both of them, which obviously delighted Sunderland fans no end. But he is a player, again, that I think has been better than what we expected, but he probably fits into the team better than we thought he would have done. He's one of those young, tricky players that likes playing a bit of football. He is a bit showboaty, yes, but at the same time, it's... do you know when you get players that showboat an awful lot and it actually does you not in because he just release the pass? He releases the pass at the right time. But honestly, if you want to kind of get an example of what Diallo can offer, our first goal against Birmingham, the way he sets it up will show you a lot about his strength. His goal against Wigan or his goal against Birmingham, because he scored in both those games, were outstanding long-range drives. The one against Wigan, the fourth one, he just belts it from about 35 yards out straight in the bottom corner, sorry. But the goals before that is probably going to give you a bit more of an example of where Diallo's at. Like, he scored in both those games and they're both eye-catching goals from him. But the first one against Birmingham, he kind of holds the ball, he's got his back to goal, and he bamboozles about 4 defenders and then threads the ball through the Ellis Sims that nobody sees. His goal against, Patrick Roberts' goal against Wigan, which was our third goal, is like interplay between him and Diallo for about 30 seconds. It's just them two one-touch passing, and Wigan can't keep up. And then eventually, like, they start moving, and it's like little back heels, little flicks. I didn't think he was that good, if I'm honest with you, like, because he looks outstanding. Like, again, I'll go back to Welbeck and Johnny Evans. You get a player on loan from a certain club and you go, he's going to go back and he's going to make an impact and we're never going to see him ever again. Unfortunately for us, Diallo's in that. He's in there.
I just wanted to bring up just quickly, there's a couple of questions that Frank has put in for you. I'll just get to the first one quickly. And so this is something I had written down anyway, but where do you see his best position? Because we've all kind of said he can play across, well, anywhere across that kind of that front line, but where would you say his best position's been?
I think his best position in the future would be at the Stadium of Light, somewhere on the pitch. I like him in the 10, but like, it's not to say he can't play right wing. I think he could do either, but I like him in the 10. I think his ability to see a pass, he can shoot from range. Sometimes you get players that are quite tricky and they've got feet that lead. Patrick Roberts has unfortunately got that a little bit. And a player we used to have called Stefan Sessegnon, who is very, very, very similar to. We signed him from PSG. He's very similar to Stefan Sessegnon in the fact that, like, again, you get excited. He's got lovely little, like, close control. I like him in the 10. I think personally that's where I would play him. But I think if he was to make a career for himself on the right wing, then I wouldn't be surprised either. But if it was my choice and it was the Sunderland team, he'd be in number 10 every week.
That's a throwback.
Is that where he's
young, you know?
So is that where he's predominantly played in the 10?
I would say he's done half and half, probably. He kind of drifts, to be honest. You could almost see he's got like a free roll at points. But I think over the past sort of month or so, our number 10's normally Alex Pritchard, who you might have remember used to play for Huddersfield and Norwich. Really good player. He's 29. His contract's at the end of the season, and he's been injured recently. He's a really important player, but with him not in the team, Diallo's kind of gone more than a 10, and that's allowed Patrick Roberts to come in, and we're starting to see this lovely little passage of play. It's probably worth mentioning that Diallo had one of his worst games for Sunderland, if not his worst, on Saturday. Yes, we were down to 10 men, but the player that we took off was Patrick Roberts when our centre-half got injured to bring another centre-half on, so it was like Diallo on his own, which wasn't quite as effective as Diallo and Roberts together. I think he links play very, very well with Roberts and also with Jack Clark, who plays on our left-hand side. He was a little bit probably isolated with having the 10 men, and we were sat right behind the ball, to be fair, because Swansea are they're still a possession-based side, and it was difficult to play against, but he kind of went more onto the right to accommodate for Roberts going off on Saturday. And yet when we started the first 20 minutes, we were completely in the ascendancy, and it was him and Roberts again linking up really, really well. Roberts was sacrificed, bringing centre half on because the player got injured, and Diallo kind of drifted a bit and nothing really came off for him. But yeah, I mean, to answer the question, you'd be 100% number 10 for me. But if he made a career on the right-hand side, it wouldn't surprise me. But I reckon that Rashford's not a bad player, is he? And he's available to play on the right-hand side sometimes as well. And it looks like he's doing all right.
Well, that was going to be my question to you, Barry, in terms of if he is in the 10, or as you said there, if it's out on the right. We've obviously just spent a lot of money on Anthony. We've got Bruno and Ericsson that can play there in the centre. There's a couple of questions already in terms of, and I'll kind of throw this to you, Barry, and then Graham back to yourself. But, Andrew asked earlier, is he ready to come back to us? I'll throw it to you, Graham, in a second. But Barry, where does he fit in? If, we've got obviously Palestri coming back as well, Garnacho, the rise of him this season, has that kind of halted Ahmad's chances, do you think, of getting into this United side?
I'm just going to take a quick time out because I've seen this and I need help. If you're still in here, Ayesh, if you're still about, can you just help me out? Because this sounds like you're trying to say, keep Casemiro out of the team, and then we need to sign Tielemans instead of Casemiro. And I just want to see if I've understood.
I'd take Tielemans every day.
Over Casemiro?
No, but I think what he's saying this. I hope he's saying save for Arsenal, because we need Casemiro more against Arsenal than we do against Palace.
Clarification needed, Ayesh, if you could just let us know. Connor, in response to your rather well-articulated question, I think it's a tough one, isn't it? It really is. But this is exactly what you want for your team. You want to be in a situation where you've got the competition for places, and it's not just about letting young people play to give them a chance to grow into the game. And I think that's exactly where we'd be by having the likes of Diallo, Garnacho available. If you're asking me right now, if we snapped our fingers and brought Diallo back in, would he start? I don't think he would, based on, how the season's going so far and how we're rising. I think that would be quite tricky. But is there a chance for him? Absolutely. I think Ten Hag, if there's one thing we seem to have noticed about him, it's that he's willing to give people a chance. He's willing to work with them to get them better. He's taken the pressure off of Jadon Sancho, for example, at the moment, and he's away and having the opportunity to rebuild his confidence, and hopefully he's going to come back and be really good as well. And he's not been mentioned within that. So he's got the potential to be one who could come back and do well. Look at the resurgence of Wan-Bissaka. A lot of people thought he might be finished. He's come back and done really well at right back as well. So he seems quite tactically astute, does our Eric. And I think, that is a really important part of it. So could he come back in? I don't know. And that's why I asked whether you thought he was a 10 or a right wing, what he'd been doing for Sunderland, because, I don't know, I feel he's probably got more chance of starting at right wing. I mean, would you start a Diallo over Fernandes? I'm not convinced you would. Would you start Diallo over Rashford? I'm not convinced you would. Anthony, I know for some people the jury's still out with him. So there is a possibility that you could potentially argue it. But as we were just talking about on the women's channel, with Nikita Paris and Leah Galton and Lucia Garcia over there, as well as what we would do with them, who would we bring in? It's the same argument you've got here. If you've got a winning team, you don't really want to change it too much. You want to keep it as best as you possibly can. So I don't know. Maybe he does need to spend another season at Sunderland, and then we'll have him back after that. That seems quite reasonable. But yeah, either way, it's exciting to see somebody doing well, and hopefully they will have a chance.
I was going to say, Graham, do you think he is ready for that? I've put it in the title Premier League step. I'm going to change that to United in a moment. But do you think he's ready for the United jump? Because I think someone has just put a comment in here. Diallo's not ready, not strong enough for United yet. He also cuts in field like Anthony. It does remind me a bit of Anthony. And this comment here, there is even Palestri after played a good cameo. Although Diallo and Palestri are different types of players. But again, another name. And Barry mentioned Sancho. I completely forgot about Sancho. There's another player. We're probably going to sign a player in summer as well in that forward position. So, I mean, Graham, if you were a Premier League side now, like a big established Premier League side, sorry, Sunderland, but if you were, would you be putting, if you were Erik ten Hag right now, would you be putting Diallo back in the setup? Because he'll play a role for sure. I'm not saying he wouldn't get games like a Garnacho, but do you think he's ready for that now? Or do you think he needs another couple of loans?
I thought his comments were quite interesting because it's funny, his comments about Diallo going back came at the same sort of time that Everton took Ellis Sims back. And Everton's took Ellis Sims back because Lampard's panicking, isn't he? Because unfortunately, I really like Everton as a football club, but they're not doing very well. And they mirror Sunderland about 5 to 10 years ago quite horribly, actually. They brought Ellis Sims back and he gets 7 minutes off the bench when all the fans are booing and going mental and getting, allegedly, their CEOs in headlocks. So it's not the best place for him to be playing football. It's a bit different, isn't it, though, for Diallo, because that's not what's happening at Manchester United at the moment. And it's probably more of a welcoming environment if he was to see a recall and not bring him back at the end of the season. And Ten Hag came out and said that if he brings him back, he's got to be someone who can definitely make an impact from the bench or he can play from the start. There was not one Sunderland fan that heard that and went, oh, God, I guess that's nice of him to say that, because that indicates he might just, it kind of sounds like he wants to keep us there, but keep him here, sorry. But then at the same time, every Sunderland fan feels he could at least make an impact from the bench, I think, at Manchester United. I don't watch Man United every week, don't get me wrong, so it's difficult for me to... No, well, not Man United men anyway. I only get to see the highlights, and obviously, big fan of Rashford. Forgot Jadon Sancho existed. I think he should come on loan to Sunderland, Jadon Sancho. That would be a great move for him. Him on the right, Diallo in the middle. Yeah, that would work. But there's a lot of options there. When you read them out, I'm like, all right, okay, yeah, that is an awful lot. But honestly, my confidence in Diallo is massive. And I don't see why he wouldn't make an impact at all. I haven't seen, like I say, Man United play every single week, but I would love to see him stay for another season. We're never going to be able to buy him because you'll probably want about 50 million for him because you paid about 37. And we just don't have that. But if we brought him on loan again, I'd be overjoyed and delighted. But have I resigned myself to him being good enough to go back to Man United and make an impact? I have, 100%. So that kind of answers it for you, I think.
No, it's a fair point you're making, 100%. To be fair, they spent a lot of money on Will Grigg, didn't they? They certainly had the cash then to splash up, but I don't think quite that wage structure. The whole... everything I know about Sunderland seems to be based off the Netflix documentary, the whole Jack Rodwell thing and everything else, and all the wage structure back in your Premier League days for sure. But
it's interesting, Connor, because Graham's just mentioned there about we'd probably want 150 million for him, and I know that's one of the things we were thinking of sort of throwing out there as to how much we think Diallo would actually be worth at the moment. And Graham just saying he's been bought for 35 million by us. I mean, the men's transfer market is ridiculously overpriced in many different ways. But, you said 150 million. I know it's a throwaway comment. Where would you genuinely put, what price tag? If you give us your very best Jesse J, that would be fabulous. What price tag would you stick on Ahmad?
I hate Jesse J.
Not about the money. It's not about the singer.
Correct. Sorry if you're listening, Jesse. I think when you look at him, to be honest, he looks like a player that would cost £37 million, if that makes sense. But then you're looking at his age and looking at potential, and I think, like you say, the men's transfer market is ridiculous. So, I think Grealish is a tremendous player. I don't think he's worth 100 million, but I'm also 37 this year. I don't know what 100 million is anymore. the transfer market is just mad. So, but I think if you look at like the transfer market, what you paid for him to begin with, how well he's done at Sunderland and showed sort of promise and how big his potential is, easy 45, 50. If someone's going to pay that, easy. Whether they will or not, based on the season in the Championship, I don't know. But there'd be no reason for Manchester United to sell any less than that based on A, what he's looking like his potential could be, the fact that he's realising a lot of his potential, albeit in a division below, and he's got about another 15 years of his career left. I would say, what is he, 21? He looks about 12. That's the weirdest thing.
He's 20, I think.
Is he 20?
20. When was he born? 2002?
He's 20, 11th of July 2002.
He was born in 2002.
Yeah, what a year that was, eh?
That is awful. So he can't remember Britpop or anything like that.
To be fair,
really,
I can't
no.
either, really. But
You never saw the Spice Girls.
Never, ever. He's got time, though. He can go into it.
Never ever. That was All Saints, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Deary mate, there's a couple of price tags being thrown out in the comments.
Jesse J.
Mac is saying here, Ahmad worth 10 to 15. To be fair, I'd say that's probably about right.
I know what he means. Yeah.
If we didn't buy him for 30, I think it was 40 million euros, including bonuses. So put that.
I've got to be honest.
At 30 odds.
I thought that was him coming in with let's if we just lowball it, try and play down. Graham's up here telling us how good he's doing. Nah, he's worth.
I think it would be. I think if we didn't buy him for that much, if he came through our youth academy, we'd be looking to sell him for about 10 or 15. I think that price tag that we bought him for, I think we obviously don't want to make a big loss on it. And Ahmad has so many clauses to reach those. Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. I think we bought him for like 20 something euros, and then there's a load of bonuses and all kinds of things in there that upped it to 40 odd. So yeah, I think he's about 10 to 15. Someone's saying 21 rising to 40. I mean, again, you could see it happening. You could see it happening, couldn't you?
It's just it's a mad market. Like, it's really hard to and like I say, a lot of my valuation of him came down to how much he paid and his potential, because you think, well, if he's got a potential where he could be like a Premier League player at a higher level, which I think he has, that immediately adds 10 million to whatever you paid for him, which then makes it 47 million. But I mean, there's certain players that I've never heard of going for like 100 million, 80 million, and I'm all that. So like, don't listen to what I think they should value him on. If I was Manchester United, I'd value him, like I say at the start of the show, £1 million. Only to Sunderland Association Football Club. But I mean, probably a good example would be maybe Jack Clarke. He went to Spurs for 10 million from Leeds. He had a good season with Leeds. He got promoted with Leeds when he was 18. They paid 10 million pounds for him. It didn't work out, but he's came back to us, and it says that we've paid 10 million pounds for him. We haven't. We've paid far less than that with a lot of clauses on top, which I assume would be like national appearances if we get promoted from the Premier League, how many goals he scores, how many assists he gets. All that kind of stuff goes on top. As far as I'm aware, we paid a lot less than 10 million for Jack Clarke. However, if he triggers all the clauses that he triggers, Sunderland fans are going to be happy to pay 10 million pounds because he's basically an England player. So you could potentially say that, if Diallo was to leave, maybe you'd pay the same amount of money, but it would be a lot of like 20 million plus all the different clauses that come on top, if that makes sense. But for me, I mean, I always say this though, it's not my money. So 100 million, whatever gets me, not bothered. Not my money.
John's referencing the Chelsea owner there. He probably would. I mean, look at the guy they've just brought from Shakhtar.
Yeah, 100 million.
He scored like 9 league goals, and they've spent 89 million pounds on. Well, I know it's about 60
year contract.
Yeah,
there's 8-year contract. The last time I saw a contract that big was for David Moyes for 7 years, and we all saw how well that ended up going. So
please don't mention that man's name ever again.
He was a good manager for Sunderland, wasn't he? I don't know what you're on about.
Awful. Worst guy that ever existed on the planet. Hate him.
Yeah. See, this is why Morgan there. I thought he was going to walk off.
This is why I like being on shows like this, where I don't have to be a journalist. I can just be a fan, because my journalist would have went, well, you didn't do a very good job. My fan says, oh my god. West Ham fans are feeling the same as I think many of us did over David Moyes. What a shame.
Yeah, no, it's certainly not a time that United fans would want to relive either. We are coming towards the end of the show. Hey, we've got a super chat here. What's going on? That is pretty amazing. Thank you for the £2 there. I did not expect to see that one. Why are we talking about selling him? Whose idea is that? To be honest, I mean, what do you think, Troy? What do you think that we should be selling him, or trying to embed him into our squad? How the conversation was brought up purely because we're just kind of trying to guesstimate, I guess, what's going to happen going into next season. Do we loan him back out again? Yeah. Do we look to move him on because of the other players we've got? How do we assess that one? Because it's a tough one, isn't it? Because in my head, I'm thinking the rise of Garnacho. We've got so many good, talented youngsters. I personally think, and I'm going to ask you this both in a second, whether like what we think is going to happen rather than what we want. But I just think with the rise of Garnacho, with the other, kind of people we've got in and around, the youngsters in and around our squad, I just don't think Ahmad's going to get enough chances at United. But I might be proved wrong. I might be proved massively wrong. But no, really appreciate the super chat there.
I think 100% what he said there. It's not that we're talking about selling him. It's just seeing if he has progressed any further than when we first bought him. Like we said, he didn't have the best of times at Rangers, so it's a good thing for him to just be looking at. It's a ballpark figure. You have this conversation with people all the time if they are getting better or not. I don't think we need to sell him. He's young enough to still have that potential and to grow into the team. You would argue if you're young enough, if you're good enough, you're young enough. It's irrelevant. As long as you're good enough, it's all right. It's not your age that matters. So, yeah, we're really, really interested to sort of see how he gets on, and he wants to sell him. He wants to sell him. Look at that. He's like, nah, just get rid of him. So there we go. He would rather play Palestri.
Well, he's saying Salalanga there. To be fair, I think a lot of this is something we probably will do a show on in terms of Elanga, because I think that's another player I didn't even mention in that conversation. Elanga, look at him. He scores that goal in Madrid. We're all saying what a player we've got here, and he's kind of fallen out of favour now. And Garnacho is the one we're looking at going, oh yeah, look at this guy. And it's like with Ahmad, he's doing so well at Sunderland, but we forget we've got Palestri. So there's just so many players, isn't there, that you look at and think we've got a lot of good youngsters. Someone's going to have to leave for their own career, unless they want to just keep going out on loan and eventually get sold. But
I'd sell him. I'd sell him to us.
Yeah. And if I can just say, Matt, I think you're right. Yes, and I'm sorry that we made you swear in a sentence. Yes, I think he did. But Alan Pardew definitely was one of those sort of people, wasn't he?
Aha!
Aha! Love it.
Dear me.
Go on, Colin, get yourself together.
Yeah, it was that comment I was trying to bring up. Sunderland play Fulham in the FA Cup. That's a good 10 against Premier League opposite. 100%. That's going to be the one where we see. But the thing is that, like Barry, you mentioned earlier, Ahmad played with us in the Europa League and certainly held his own in Europe. I know it's not the Champions League, but it's still a European competition. He held his own.
Fulham are flying high. They might have players that can't take a penalty kick correctly, but aside from that, it's going to be a good side. So absolutely, that's going to be a cracker, seeing how he performs in that game.
So I've asked you what you want or think. What do you, Graham? I'll come to you for what do you think we're going to do with Ahmad then? Taking your Sunderland hat off for a second, what do you think will happen going into next? Do you see him going out on loan again, but maybe to if you don't get promoted, a Premier League side, maybe this time, maybe like I'm trying to think of a team now. I don't know. I was going to say Southampton, but aren't they bottom of the league right now? like a team like that, like an established Premier League side. Can you see him doing that maybe next season if Sunderland don't go up?
I would love to think he would do with Johnny Evans, that like we would get promoted, he would help us to get promoted, then you would want him in the team for 6 months, then realise there's not enough space and give us him back when we're in the Premier League in January. But I don't know if we're going to get promoted. The league's mad. But I've got to kind of say what I said before, take my Sunderland hat off. I don't see why Ten Hag wouldn't give him a shot. I think his comments are really telling. He said when he comes back, he's got to be in a place where he can make an impact from the bench, or B, start games. To me, that's him saying another 6 months, and I think he can make an impact from the bench. I think it's pretty obvious. I think he really could make an impact. I honestly do, and I don't know. I know we joked about him, like saying you don't need him, he's rubbish and all that kind of stuff. But like, I also, for the way that he's played, the kind of nice character that he is, and the kind of like fun element he's also brought to Sunderland's attack and play. Much like Johnny Evans, he's a player that I want to see do well, and at the highest level that he possibly can. There's a lot of players that have left Sunderland who have been our own players, like Jordan Henderson, Jordan Pickford, and we're delighted when they're doing well. And there's a lot of lone players that have done a really good job here and gone on to do fantastic. And I think Diallo will be the next one. I would wish we could keep him, but I think, we're a project. I think it might take us minimum a couple of seasons to get up. I pray to God that it's this season and we go, because then I think we'll be the first to be double relegated to then be double promoted. So that would be tremendous. Do a Netflix series on that, please. But I think it's a tough league, and it's obviously a big ask to get promoted twice. And I think unless we do get promoted twice, you're probably looking at Ahmad going back and trying to make an impact. And then when it comes to January, maybe a conversation can be had if he hasn't played as many minutes as he would like to. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to see him stay. But sometimes you see a player and you just know that they're destined to be higher than where you are at the moment. I don't think he's too big for Sunderland Football Club, don't get me wrong, but he's we're a championship team at the moment that's hoping to get promoted over the next few years in a project. He's a 20-year-old, 21-year-old player, probably come the end of the season, that has the potential to be one of the better players in the league above, and he's going to want to try and start proving that. So it's one of them things. I'm pleased he's been here. I hope he stays longer. If he doesn't, then thanks so much, Ahmad. There'll always be probably a bit of affection from Sunderland fans moving forward. No,
yeah, I think you're bang on and everything you just said there. I've got to bring this up again. Troy, save your money, man. Honestly, I appreciate all the super chats you put in. You can just comment. You don't have to put super chats in. We will get to all the comments where we can. So you really don't have to do that. But it's vastly appreciated for the channel and the growth of it. But saying Guy to Palestri's class for winning the league, I like that. That's certainly that's certainly a line to read. Win the league is not a linear process. You need to take chances. Have United won the league since August? I mean, certainly an early shout. I wouldn't. I wasn't in there for that early. I'm still not fully convinced now, but I mean, just on the first bit, talking about Palestri, again, another player who's been out on loan a couple of times now. Is that the decision, do you think, Barry? Do you think it's got to be one or the other? It's got to both Ollie signings as well, I believe. It's got to be Palestri or Ahmad, but we just don't have the space to have both in the squad. Well,
this is it, and it's a tough one. You need to have at least one player for each position. You kind of want that. Fergie used to want the front four, didn't he? And that's the same thing. You had two up front and two in reserve, and it worked perfectly. So I think that's kind of where we are. If you look at it that way, we've already discussed the 10 position is currently Bruno and potentially Ericsson, who can drop in behind. So is there a gap there? Could Ericsson be one who drops back a bit more, and Ahmad comes in as potentially the backup 10, possibly? Does he go out on the right wing and become the backup to Rashford? I'm thinking not, because as we've already said there, you've got Anthony, sorry about that, you've got cramp in my leg and decided to kick the laptop over. That would have been fun. Live on All for United in front of 80 people. But yeah, happens to everybody on their debut, doesn't it? Some people fall off stage. I get cramp. I've been sat here for 3 hours just discussing Man United. They get cramp playing 90 minutes of football. I'm a superstar. But yeah, I don't think it has to be one or the other necessarily, because like I say, even if Ahmad doesn't start or Palistri doesn't start, you stick him out on loan. It's not a problem. That's what the system is there for. They are young enough for us to be able to blood them in later on if we need to. So I've got all the faith in the world in Troy. Not in Troy, so I've just read it again in Eric. What I was going to say about Troy was that he had the win in the league. I've had a mare in my head. So the pain I'm in is second to none, but I'm carrying on. What I was trying to say is that I think Troy's got a good shout with winning the league. I know that Jarvis isn't particularly agreeing with him, but I'm telling you now, this weekend we beat Palace in midweek, and if we win at the weekend, it's not against the realms of possibility. We pulled back those dirty Newcastle people from 12 points, didn't we, Graham? Why not bring in the Gooners? So
I remember that very well. I lived in a very mixed school because I lived in a place called South Shields growing up. And it was the more Newcastle got good, the more, unfortunately, South Shields became a very strong Newcastle element for a while. And I remember them being 12 points to get top of the league. I would have been 11 years old. And let's just say that was hilarious. And was one of my better childhood memories. So thanks, Eric Cantona and all. I really appreciate your work for me as a kid, because that was dead funny.
I just say, this is why he's dropping all the money. If you stuck a tenner on that, he's hoping that he's going to be able to get it all back.
100 to 1 the odds. I tell you what, Troy, I'll make a deal with you here. If United go on and win the league, I will give you all of your super. I want to give you all your money back anyway, but I will give you all of your super chat money back that you've put in. But please stop putting. We do appreciate that. I mean, you said they have to contribute a few super chats. So we really do appreciate it. On that note, by the way, we have just hit we hit it earlier on. 7,000 subscribers on this channel. So thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed and has watched us over the last few years or so. So that's another milestone hit for us. So that is great to see as well. So appreciate you all there. And Jarvis is one of those long-standing commenters as well that I've seen across the channel over the last couple of years as well. So appreciate that. Liverpool midfielders old never. Again, I said that earlier. I want United to go for Tielemans, to be fair as well, but I can't see it happening now.
Can I just get John to clarify if this is Kevin or Alan?
I'd love to see Alan Keegan do it, to be fair.
Would you love it? Love it.
You know where I'm going with that. I don't even know what my last question was going to be now. Barry, your little 2-minute segment there where you just completely fell off the rails.
Mate, my leg is so sore. Honestly, it's 3 hours job. It's not for everybody. The question was, one of the ones, Garnacho's rise. Do you think that stumped Diallo's possibilities of coming back? Because we've had all of these youngsters. I know you said, Graham, you don't watch Manchester United necessarily as much as you do others due to the fact you support other teams. But do you think that is going to be a problem? Genuinely, if you look at the names that have been mentioned throughout this evening, do you think he's got a problem getting in there, or do you really rate him even above all of those? If you were Erik ten Hag, would you say, actually, no, he needs to be on the top of that list?
I think there's a lot of options. He's not going to get overhead like Rashford and that, because Rashford's starting to kind of hit that run of form, and obviously he's got a lot more years experience in him. I've watched Garnacho once or twice, and I mean, I'm not going to make a judgment on a kid that I don't watch on a regular basis, but I think Diallo's got a bit more than him. When I watch Garnacho, he's got a lot of pace and he can twist and turn a bit, but for me, Diallo's, from what I've seen of them both, which one of them is minimal, one of them is is maximal a word? Minimal and maximal. Seen a lot more of, I think Diallo's got potential to be better, but again, I don't watch Garnacho all the time, but for me, Garnacho looks a different player. If you ask me which one I want, I'd choose Diallo. But it's a very, very biased opinion. One of them's doing it for Manchester United at the minute, one of them's doing it for Sunderland, which pains me to say, but obviously it's different levels at the moment, isn't it? But I honestly think Diallo could contribute. I kind of wish I was saying that I don't think he can, and he should come back to Sunderland and spend all of the rest of his career here. But like I said, I've got to go back to Johnny Evans, and I mean, we've had the likes like Marcus Alonso on loan as well. We actually could have signed him, which was ridiculous because we wouldn't pay $5 million for him. But people were pulling their hair out that we wouldn't pay what I think Fiorentina was at the time wanted for him, because we were like, we can see what he's got. You can see he's like a quality left back, and we didn't sign him. Johnny Evans, Danny Welbeck. There's players that have come in that you go, you know what, they're a level above. And Danny Welbeck and Johnny Evans both contributed a lot to Manchester United. You'll be able to tell me more, but from the outside looking in, they both played a good amount of games. Welbeck would have played more if it wasn't for his injury, probably would have played more games for Arsenal if it wasn't for his injury. I think Diallo can at least contribute to that level. I certainly don't think the level's too high for him, not at all. But I'll be delighted to be proved wrong if he wants to stay here for the next season.
It's going to be an intriguing summer, isn't it? What happens with some of these youngsters? We'll be doing another show with a Birmingham fan on Hannibal in the next kind of few weeks as well, because again, another player that you're looking at going, where's he going to fit into this squad? He's too good to be.
I love his name. Though. What a name! He got really wound up against us when we played Birmingham, so his temperament has not improved. He got booked, I think, and I got taken off because he was losing his rag. So
he's got a fire. I've seen him so many times in the under-23s, and he's got in the derby games, especially when I've seen him in the 23s. He does half like getting stuck in, but I do like a bit of that. So we'll be doing a show on him very soon as well, because that's another player with a lot of potential that can't just sit around forever, albeit he is still quite young as well. I love this name. Country Factor Conferences. That is I've never seen a name like that in one of our chats before. Ten Hag to is that inexperience with demands of the games he costs us a get. Now that's an interesting shout. I can't say I agree with it, but I mean, if that's your opinion, then fair enough. I can't say I'm on board with that too much. Jarvis saying if Rashford and Martial gets injured, not likely. We defend Ryan, obviously Vegas and Garnacho, backups are Elanga and Palestri, and that's why I don't believe we can compete for the title. Fair enough. It's like I said, I'm still a bit skeptical as to whether we can go the distance, so to speak. But I've got a bet actually with my mate who's a Liverpool fan that Vegas is going to outscore Núñez for the rest of the season, which I think is a very safe bet on my part. But there we are.
I do think that if Rashford gets injured, we are in a world of trouble, potentially, because poor old Anthony Martial hasn't exactly been at his very best for us, as he has been before. So, Jarvis, I think, has got some really good points there, but, we've got to be able to dream, ain't you? That's the whole point of the game.
No, agreed. Exactly. We'll round it off then. Graham, I just want to come to you.
One last question.
Oh, you go for it.
The question that you had on your question list. If you could sum up Diallo's influence, Diallo's time at Sunderland so far in one sentence, what would it be?
Oh, bloody hell. In one sentence, his impact. Imperative that he stays fit.
There you go. And I think that says everything we need to know about him, really, is that he is ripping it up while he's down there. And that's, to me, that's just fantastic. That's exactly what we want to see our youngsters doing.
Honestly, watch his goals against Birmingham and Wigan, because they're just great to watch. But look at the ones he set up before that as well. Please look at the one against Birmingham, because I remember, and since I know I can now swear on this, I remember on my official Twitter account for the podcast, official Twitter account, what am I talking about? On the Twitter account that I have for my podcast, I remember I posted, that is just fucking brilliant, Diallo. That is absolutely fucking brilliant, because I was so impressed by the fact that he just turned about 4 defenders in the team, slid to a ball that no one on the pitch saw. Definitely watch the highlights from the Birmingham game and watch the highlights from the Wigan game. We beat Wigan 4-1 away, Birmingham 2-0. And you'll see exactly why I rate Diallo so highly, and why, like I say, it's imperative that he remains fit, because we've got a lot of players in that position where he can play. I don't think there's many players that would have the same level of impact as he does, despite the fact that I rate all these other players that we have that could play those positions.
I think it's brilliant. When Ollie got him, we didn't know who he was. And I think now that he's had the opportunity to go out on loan, and we're hearing what we're hearing about his time at Sunderland, I don't know what other United fans would think, but I'm quite excited about the chance that he might come back and be an absolute banger of a player. So, yeah, thanks, Graham. You've come along and you've made me feel even better about life. That's why we like having you on.
I like being on, so it kind of works, doesn't it? I talk a load of rubbish sometimes, and obviously I have not sold Amad Diallo to Sunderland yet, but it's nice to be here, I guess.
You've sold him to me.
Indeed, you've certainly done that. I'll ask you one final question, Graham, and then obviously we'll look to wrap this one up. From an outsider's point of view, how have you kind of seen United this season? How do you view us, and do you see us in a title race? How do you think Erik ten Hag's done? How do you kind of look at everything from a United side, from an outsider's perspective, looking at us?
It's still not the Man United that I grew up with, but it's getting there, isn't it? I think
That's
the
sentence,
managers.
to be fair.
Yeah,
that's the sentence.
It's like if I went to, put it this way, do you know when we played you in the semi-final of the one of the best days of my life, when Phil Barsley scored in the last minute and I lost my mind, And then Hernandez scored, and then none of us could take penalties for about half an hour, and then we eventually scored a few more than you did, which is about one penalty. That I think we won that penalty shootout 2-1. There was 6 penalties. Horrendous. Phil Jones, what a night. But then we went again in the league in the April time, and I've been to Old Trafford to see Sunderland play against Manchester United 5 times in my life. The first 2-3 times, I was like, it's a day out, innit? Whatever. The last 2 times I've been, which I think were the last 2 times I've been, were the semi-final at Old Trafford and the 1-0 win where Seb Larson scored and we had the great escape and just beat all the best teams in the league randomly in like a 5-game spell and stayed up out of nowhere. But both times that I went that season, I was like, I can do these. Like the Man United fear factor completely went. That was in the Moyes, I think. Well, that explains a lot, doesn't it? But the fear factor of going to Man United and thinking, well, if we get something here, fair enough. And we'd went a few seasons previous when Sir Alex was saying we drew 2-2. You scored a goal in the last minute, which was deflected by Anton Ferdinand. And I remember going, oh, man, that's probably the one and only chance you're going to get to beat Man United away. Oh, God, I can't believe we conceded in the last minute. And then fast forward a few years later, you were like going to Man United confident. And I think a lot of teams have done that over the past few years. Have gone to Man United going, well, why not? Like, they're not what they used to be. But I think that tide is turning a little bit. You're now going, oh, hang on a minute. These are doing all right, actually. It's great to see Rashford doing well because I absolutely love Marcus Rashford as a person, as a player. Some good young players coming through. I feel sorry for Harry Maguire because I know you might not be the biggest fans of him, but like as an England fan, I think he's our best in the half. I absolutely love him. It just doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit at Manchester United for some reason or another. But I think, that even the likes of Fred and that are doing quite well. I cannot understand McTominay. As a person who lives in Scotland, I'm not quite sure on that one. No offense, Scott. But there is a lot more players in that team where you kind of go, he's not bad him, as opposed to having like 6 to 7 players where you go, well, why is he not working out with Manchester United? How's that not happened? The more you watch Man United, the more it looks like Man United. The Man United against Man City was the Man United that I remembered a little bit more. You got a really lucky goal, which should have never been a goal because it was offside. And then the second one was kind of like straight off the bat because you had that. I mean, there's been a few times I've been to Old Trafford when I was younger. I think it was one game we were 1-0 up and we only got 19 points that season. And you kind of felt it was going to be inevitable that Man United would pull it back and win 2-1. And you scored in the 85th and the 89th, I think. Beckham and Scholes, I want to say. And there was a feeling of inevitability. I actually watched the game in the pub before we played Swansea on Saturday, and there was a weird feeling of inevitability, like Manchester United of old, the whole Fergie time kind of business, and being able to overturn a game. And I haven't felt like that since like early 2000s, maybe. And that can only be a good thing for Man United. Like, it looks like they're getting back to where they're going to be. And I know there's a lot of clubs and a lot of fans that hate Man United for the success. I understand that. 100%, especially if you're a kid born like the late 80s and early 90s, because a team that was that successful and scored in the last minute so many times does drive you mental. But I think when you've got a team like Man United, there's only so long there can be like crap, for want of a better word, before it starts turning. And it feels like this is the first season where it's starting to go and turn around, and you're going to get third or second, I think.
No, that's a fair shout and a good point to round off on, because I think that's the general feeling around Manchester fans at the moment for sure. Graham, you've been absolutely brilliant. Thank you for coming on as always, as John and Dan. Thank you for joining us, and thanks for subscribing as well. I said we're well over 7K now. We were 7K when we started, but now we've gained about 16 or so just during this hour show, so that is fantastic. So thank you all for subscribing. Make sure you're liking the video as well, if you are new around here, and just like it anyway. Graham, where can people find all your socials and things like that, where to follow you and all those kinds of things?
Yeah, I've got one really professional Twitter account, one really unprofessional Twitter account. Depends which one you want to follow. If you want to follow my own personal stuff, obviously I do cover Manchester United women an awful lot in the WSL. I'm vigorously passionate about women's football and have been for a while, and that's just at Graham Falk, as you can see my name on the screen here. Just put that out there, take the space away, and that's me on there. If you want to see my Sunderland ramblings and kind of my less professional side, shall we say, it's not unprofessional, it's less professional, then my own Sunderland podcast is What the Falk Pod, which is Falk is in my name, so it's all just one word, What the Folk Pod. You can search What the Folk anywhere, kind of online and stuff like that as well. Interestingly enough, so What the Folk began as like a university project and developing it with Sunderland podcast. I won't bore everyone with the details. And originally it started with me just interviewing players. When I was at university, it was also the pandemic, so I got incredibly lucky. And there's a couple of former Man United players on there as well. There's Wes Brown, a 2-hour interview with Wes. The first hour was on his time at Manchester United. Some good Ronaldo, funny stories there. I'm guessing you still like Ronaldo. I know it's kind of worked out for everyone, but it'll turn back. He was all right for years, and he didn't do a bad job in the first time. But there's like Danny Higginbotham on there as well, Fraser Campbell, and we do touch on the stuff at Manchester United as well. So if you thought, wow, to listen to a Sunderland podcast, if you go back about 2 years, you'll get plenty of Man United stuff there you can dig into.
Yeah, fantastic. Make sure you go and check out Graham. You'll see him on All for United WFC as well. Make sure you go and check that out. It's the women's channel. We did a show just before this one. Me and Barry were there with Charlie and Jess talking all about the 6-0 win over Liverpool. So that's a show worth watching. Obviously, we did the Man City reaction yesterday as well. Quickly answering this one, when are you next on? So we will be back on this channel on Wednesday with our first watch-along of the year. You will see me and Barry again. Anton will be back. John Commodi's in the comments. We'll be there at half-time, full-time. We've got a load of other fans coming on at half-time and full-time as well to give their thoughts on the game and things like that. And then we'll be back again for the Arsenal preview on either Thursday or Friday. So make sure you keep an eye on for that one as well.
Which one? Come on, I've only linked it back round again. Come on.
You'll get used to this from Barry. He's very good at his one-liners and his puns and things like that. He's very witty when it comes to things like that. So make sure you're following these two. Make sure you're liking the video and subscribing if you are new. And we shall see you for the watch-along on Wednesday when hopefully United are putting 5 or 6 past Crystal Palace. See you then.